Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you on the screen. Other pairs will be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video because I do have a bonus pair in store. But yeah, guys, we'll go through my trade for the week first and then progress into the analysis shortly after. So if there is a particular pair you want to see, feel free to skip ahead using the timestamps below. But I had one position this week on Euro CAD. This was actually the bonus pair which we were talking about on my last weekly analysis. This was the bonus pair looking at shorts, looking at a push back down into the lows here. Eventually I did push the trade a little bit further because of my risk to reward, and I was also expecting the market to go further. I'm still expecting more downside for EuroCAD going forward, but I hopped into some nice sells on EuroCAD on a pullback into some nice area of confluence. We had a nice trend line coming in, retested that resistance there. I went short on this nice bearish engulfing candle after that big spike to the upside, which I believe was some news. I can't remember which one it was. We had some news, price spike to the upside and get a nice shift in momentum. Hopped in on that candle there, stop loss just above the high with some wiggle room. And my first target was the target I was talking about coming into the week. We were trading around here. I said I was originally looking for the retest of this structure, didn't quite see it. We dropped to the downside, a few wicks to the upside, but nothing really coming back into that area, so I had to adapt. Got into a new area of confluence which was still meeting criteria. Hopped into some shorts, nothing's changed from a directional perspective. Still looking for a lot more downside for EuroCAD. Came into the lows, that's where I took some partials and went to break even, and then that's when I got out of the trade as a whole. So really nice trade there on EuroCAD, only that position for the week. Nothing really materialized in some other pairs I was looking at, but next week is looking good. So let's get to it. So Euro USD, seeing some nice downside. We did have quite a lot of consolidation this week, but we did drop to the downside off the back of again, forget what news it was, but we had some more news this week, which we did see dollar strengthen, and of course Euro USD move in the opposite direction, taking out these lows. So I did say in my weekly analysis, I'm actually looking for price to eventually actually go and take out the lows there, which we just about did, or we testing the lows, more or less testing. Maybe you spiked beneath it by a few pips or so, but more or less prices at that support. So with Euro USD, I still do think there's more downside to be had. I'm looking at Euro coming back into this support here. Again, there is still a possibility of a bigger retracement. We've had quite a big hefty sell-off ever since we spiked and create those new highs. We've had a big hefty sell-off, so I wouldn't be surprised if you do see a big up move next week potentially for Euro, and then later on we come back down. Or if things are just far too bearish, which they do look like they are, we may just see a simple break and retest off the prior low. Again, we had a lot of momentum come off the back of the news. I wouldn't be surprised if you just see a quick retest and the market continues to drop to the downside into the next daily zone, which is around 1.05400. So still short bias with Euro. Still looking for more downside in terms of areas we can be looking to get involved with. 1.069 in the retest, that low looks very, very attractive. Like I said, if we can hold this area, I do think there's some really nice sell opportunities starting to brew. But if we do start breaking to the upside and definitely start taking out some of these highs here, then I am still bearish, but I do think we'll probably form another major lower high on the daily chart, something as such, and then eventually roll back over. So maybe that bigger sell-off I'm looking for may happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks as we have that bigger retracement. But for now, I'm still kind of keeping in tune with the market, which is seeing lower lows, lower highs, a lot of bearish momentum. So taking some break and retest, waiting for some good entry signals, is still looking like a very, very nice trading setup. So if Euro USD still expecting more downside, all I'm seeing is consistent lower highs with this market. We've got one over there, it actually starts higher up, second, third, and we had another one over here. So I was just looking for that theme to continue, breaking retest of that low, and of course a push into the next daily zone at 1.05400. So that's the plan next week for Euro USD. Okay, so on to dollar yen. So dollar yen very bullish this week. Well, actually we gapped to the downside quite aggressively. A lot of the yen pairs did have that quite aggressive gap to start the week, but nothing really changed in terms of the directional bias. Yes, we did have a big gap to the downside, but again, the way I determine my direction is the market structure, is momentum. Is the market creating higher highs or higher lows? Is it failing at highs? Is it creating new lows? That's what I'm looking at. And this was the low we had that created this big push to the upside, creating the new highs past this point. So unless we had a big gap to downside and the market eventually went and broke through this low, that's when I would actually throw my hands up and put a pause to my bullish bias. But nothing really happened with dollar yen apart from coming back into this level here, respected it very well. And now price is looking like it's just about poking its head above the highs here. And we've just created a higher high just before the weekly candle close. So going forward with dollar yen, I'm still expecting more upside. I've been talking about this daily level up here at 150 as our kind of like end goal for dollar yen, not necessarily end goal, but a target we're working towards, because if you look at all the higher time frames, we're seeing comfortable uptrends in pretty much all the higher time frames, still seeing higher highs and higher lows, monthly, weekly, daily. So I'm expecting us to come back into that area of resistance, and 150 is a very, very big psychological level. So that's kind of where I'm expecting the market to be attracted towards. So I'm still looking at buys for dollar yen, and going forward, now that we're coming back into that resistance, I want to see the market comfortably break through, look for some pullbacks, some retests of that structure, and then again looking for the next higher low with dollar yen, because all we're seeing at the moment is consistent higher highs and consistent higher lows. So the theme of the market is definitely bullish. Therefore, as someone who likes trading trends, likes trading momentum, I'm definitely only looking at buys in this setup until we start taking out some major swing lows, which at the moment is looking unlikely. Definitely a possibility, and of course if that doesn't happen, I will pivot. But all I'm seeing is bullish structure here, so that's the direction I'll be looking to trade in. So buying opportunities look really good on the break, and we test at 147.830. First, I would wait for a much more confident breakout. I know it looks like we've just about closed above, but again, I'm not a big fan of shallow breakouts. I want the market to really pull away, and then I'll look for my retest of that structure, my entry confirmations. And again, in terms of targets, it could just be wherever we create the high. So if we break to the upside, create a high around 148.776, for example, that could be a logical target. It's not too far, sensible, and of course the market could fail at that high as well. We do have 150, which is not too far away, but definitely quite a push. So maybe you're looking at trading your stop loss or taking partials on the way. That'll be up to you. But if I do get into any dollar yen buys, it most likely probably will be back to the high that the market does create. I'm not looking to try and push the trade too far. I might leave small position to trickle, but yeah, if dollar yen just push it back to highs and keep up that kind of structure we're seeing here on the 4H. So yeah, still looking at buys. Keep an eye on breaking retest of 147.800, and yeah, next big target 150. Okay, so on to dollar CAD next. So USD CAD, we had some downside this week, and we did come into a very critical level of or area of resistance, and where we could potentially see a lower high form, which is one reason why I was skeptical of dollar CAD, because I was very bullish on dollar. I have been very bullish on dollar for the past 2-3 weeks now, looking for Euro USD more downside, pound USD more downside, Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar, expecting more downside for those markets. But dollar CAD and dollar Swiss have been a bit dollar Swiss, we have kind of worked our way to the upside, and so have dollar CAD over the past kind of couple of weeks. But for the past week or so, we have been rejecting this 1.365 level, which is why I have been pausing on dollar CAD, not really looking for buying opportunities, because from a technical standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to be looking to buying into this area. It actually makes more sense to be looking for sells, and we have seen a nice downside move. I'm not ready just to sell dollar CAD just yet. It does look like we could be forming maybe a larger head and shoulder pattern, with the left shoulder being here, the head being over there, and possible right shoulder could be forming soon. Or we could be seeing price breakthrough structure, which is this swing low, which would be great as well. And then we can look for some lower highs and retest and take some shorts there. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for dollar CAD. It looks like a short setup, which is slowly brewing, slowly manifesting itself. And I'm just waiting for a solid structure to trade, because we have been slowly leaking to the downside. But all in all, this is our price swing low, which created this high, and we haven't really broken through that. So potentially we could still have a bigger move to the upside as such. So the smart thing to do in this situation would be wait for that kind of right shoulder to form, wait for that right shoulder to set up. You can look to trade the right shoulder if you want to. It's a little bit more aggressive, but of course better risk to reward. Or you can look for the more conservative, safer approach, is wait for that right shoulder to form or the market to break structure, and then look for some lower lows and lower highs there. So that's kind of the way I'm looking to anticipate dollar CAD falling to the downside, in the way I'm looking to trade it. In terms of targets, I'm looking at this major swing high there on the left, trading around 1.33800. So that could make up for a very nice target to have as well. So shorts for dollar CAD look pretty good, because again, if we do zoom out and we kind of forget the dollar bullish bias or whatever, you know, we have been slowly moving to the downside in this channel. So potentially we could even see something like this happen with dollar CAD if the channel will complete itself back to the lows. Of course, we could still see the opposite. We could still see something like that happen as well. And if we do start breaking back above this area, I'll quickly jump back on the buys with dollar CAD and look for price to come to these highs and these highs, so on and so forth. But we haven't seen that yet. So my bullish bias has definitely been on pause with dollar CAD, and I'm actually just gearing up for some sales if it does happen. So I'm looking for a break, and we tested this low at 1.349. I do want to see that right shoulder form. I want to see that break of structure of this low here, and then I'll start looking for my lower highs and probably a nice move back into the lows there. So, or the prior highs there at 1.338. So that will be the plan next week for dollar CAD. Okay, so over to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound's getting very choppy now, and yeah, not a fan of the pair for the past few weeks, and I've actually gotten less of a fan if that was possible. But yes, we do have a slight decline in price here. There's a bit of a bearish trend to work with, but we've been failing to break through these lows for quite some time here. So I'm not really eager to short the market, especially with us creating these equal lows here. It looks like the market could be slowly forming a bit of a rounded bottom here. We've gone from lower lows to equal lows, now potentially higher lows, which could give us a bigger move to the upside. So I'm not really a big fan of trading Euro Pound. I'm kind of just boxing this off as consolidation. There was an area of confluence on the 4H time frame connecting these lower highs here. So we've got the 1 point over here, second over there. We're looking for a third one on the retest of this structure. We did see a nice reaction there on Tuesday, Wednesday, and we did see a brief move to the downside, but it looks like the market has placed another higher low. As you can see, we're slowly picking up these higher lows now. So for me, I personally would just disregard this pair and move on to the next one very quickly, because all I'm seeing is textbook consolidation here. Well, not textbook, it's a little bit all over the place, but it's definitely consolidation. We're not getting clean higher highs and higher lows, or clean lower lows and lower highs. There's no direction, especially on the 4H time frame, which is my main time frame of focus for analysis. So if I can't get a clear direction in the market, that's when I need to sit on my hands and wait for an opportunity to present itself, wait for the market to break structure, or go look at a different pair. And right now, if Euro Pound, yes, we're still kind of holding on to this area here. Potentially the market could still hold onto that resistance and potentially still drop to the downside into the lows. Would I bet on that? Absolutely not. So if you're looking to trade Euro Pound, the best I can see is some shorts here, which is kind of what we were talking about last week. So we haven't still broken through, it's still respecting the resistance. So still definitely not a bad place to short, but looking at the condition of the market and how everything is setting up, I think it's just not a good quality position. So what I'll be looking for Euro Pound is for price to start breaking through the highs here, which is more or less 0.865, and the lows here 0.85. If we can start breaking through these highs, at that point you probably have a bit more of a trend to follow. Then I'll be looking for some break and retests and pullbacks and looking for some longs. And of course, if you start breaking to the downside, that would be fantastic as well. Now we're looking for some trades going south and probably see that higher time frame trend continue. So what I'm looking for Euro Pound is the break above these highs or above the lows here, and actually start seeing a bit of a trend. Anything in here is a bit of no man's land for me. So if you're looking to trade in there, that's the best I can see for Euro Pound. But for me, I'll be waiting for the break above the highs or the lows, and definitely looking at other pairs in the meantime. So that's the best I've got for Euro Pound going into next week. Okay, so over to Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar, still nothing's changed about this one. Still looking at push back down into these swing lows, 0.62. That is still the long-term goal I'm looking to work towards with Aussie dollar. Still focused on the shorts. However, structure is just a little bit choppy these days. As we can see, more or less equal highs up here. Market giving us equal lows down there. We've got a comfortable ranging market between 0.65, we'll call it, and 0.63600. So until the low breaks, I'm not really looking to do anything. We are still kind of placing in lower highs As we can see here, we've got one over there, second there, market's kind of pinched it, potentially could be forming one there. So we do have this bearish trend at play, which I'm kind of looking to continue. But of course, I want to see the market start breaking some structure, start breaking some lows again to show me that, okay, the market is back bearish again and likely to form another lower high and continue that trend. So I'll be looking for the break and retest of the lows here, at least for any opportunities. I'm not interested in Aussie dollar in here because, again, I can still see a potential bigger move to the upside for Aussie dollar first as well. Similar to what I was talking about with Euro USD, how we might have a bigger retracement before we do sell off. We could still see something like that with Aussie dollar because, again, we got these massive lower highs the market has been printing on the higher time frames. We could still see one of those come into action again, the lower high somewhere, and then the drop to the downside. This looks very, very natural. It kind of flows with the market. Big push down, big retracement, big push down, big retracement, big push down. It's not out of character. It makes sense if the market was to have a bigger retracement, since we are a little bit fatigued here and exhausted. So I can see the market doing both things, aka breaking to the upside and coming back down, or just breaking straight to the downside first. Of course, I have no idea which the market will do, so I'm obviously staying on my feet, staying on my toes. So if you do break to the downside, I'm ready for the break and retest, trying to catch the next lower high. If we do push back up, we may come back and retest some structure over here, maybe form some lower lows, some lower highs eventually, and then I look to get into some structure. But of course, we'll probably discuss that at a later date when we actually do form that price action, but I'll be looking for something like that to form if we do see a bigger push to the upside. But for next week, not interested in trading here, just a ranging market, not interested. If we can break for the lows at 0.63600, fantastic. That's why I'll look for my shorts, some lower highs, and yeah, we've got a lovely support level to target there at 0.62. So that'll be the plan for Aussie dollar going into next week. Okay, so up next we've got NZD CAD. So NZD CAD, arguably consolidation as well. Same thing with Aussie dollar, pretty much equal highs, equal lows. But with this one, we are starting to break to the downside ever so slightly. You can see the market starting to pick up with these lower lows and lower highs here. So I am looking at more downside to come for NZD CAD. Same thing with Aussie dollar as well. But at least with this one, if you can push the downside a little bit more, look for a nice break and retest. The shorts actually look a lot better here with NZD CAD and a lot more promising as well. I'm still looking for the market to come back into the low here on the left. Obviously, eventually we're looking at the price swing low down here, but first things first, we'll look at this low here on the left. So with NZD CAD, I am looking at a bit more downside, and then we've got a lovely level of support here to be looking at a retest of. So as you can see, support once, twice, third time, fourth time, briefly five as well. Now it looks like the market is breaking through. So if you can push the downside a little bit further, come back for that retest, we'll be looking for the next lower high and looking for our entries there. We're getting some nice confluence at this particular area on the retest of 0.8, big psychological level as well. If we can see some healthy rejection there, I would not be against looking to short, looking for some entries and looking for a push into 0.79400, which is where I've got that daily level taken across from that low there. So yeah, NZD CAD going forward, I do like the shorts. We are still seeing consistent lower highs for quite a while now. As you can see, if I mark them on, lower high, lower high, lower high, another one, and we keep taking out the lows as well. The market keeps pushing lower, consistently taking out lows too. So the trend is definitely corrective. It's not the cleanest bearish trend you will ever see, but definitely a bearish trend it is. So we're looking to continue that to the downside. It looks like we're breaking through some substantial support here, 0.8, big psychological level. If you can come back for a retest, you've got some nice trend line confluence there. If you can see the necessary entry confirmations, definitely looks like a good opportunity to go short, stop loss above the area, and we've got a nice daily level running just underneath us at 0.79300. So looking at shorts next week, keep an eye on the break and retest of 0.8, but yeah, looking for a push into that daily zone next week. Okay, so over to pound NZD. So we did see a lot downside this week. We were looking for a bit more retracement. I was eyeing up these potential area for some longs. I'm still overall bullish on pound NZD. I was looking for some longs at this area here and also at this area, which we're not quite there yet on the break and retest of 2.09. So we had a brief reaction from that level, but broke through very, very quickly. As you can see there, big shift of momentum breaking through, big 4H candle breaking through. Looks like we're having a brief retest at the moment, but I'm still looking at some buys going forward. I'm looking at this as a big impulsive move to the upside, and this is kind of our retracement slash bull flag sort of phase in the market. So coming into 2.09, I've been talking about that level for quite a while because it was a big level of resistance, which ages ago when we had the first initial breakout, I was looking for the retest of, but we didn't see it. And now we're coming back into that same vicinity. So hopefully we can see a bounce coming into that area. Of course, I'll be judging price action when we get there, seeing what our candlesticks are printing, not just jumping in straight away when we get there. But as you can see with pound NZD, we're quite bullish on the higher time frames, a lot of momentum to the upside, seeing consistent higher highs and higher lows. So basically looking at that momentum continuing. But of course, whether it continues or not, we'll make that call when we come into that area. So with pound NZD still bullish, still looking at move to the upside. Again, in terms of trades, I probably wouldn't look for a push all the way back to the highs there. Potentially could happen, of course, if that higher time frame trend wants to continue. But in terms of actually finding a solid place to place your take profit, which is reasonable, makes sense. You know, if you're looking at areas as such, broken support here, the market could potentially come into that area and probably sell off as well if this bearish trend becomes any bigger. So I'll be looking at 2.113, which is that level for a take profit. Potentially this resistance as well if you want to push your trade a little bit further. And of course, you've got the high there as well if you want to look for the full swing and kind of maximize your risk to reward. But of course, the longer, the further you push your trades, you know, the less likely price will hit your TP, just in terms of simple logic. It doesn't matter if the trend is in your favor or not. But for pound NZD going into next week, I already do like this 2.09 level. It's got nice confluence. We'll see what type of entries we can get at that particular area, because at the same time, it could just break straight through and price will obviously just continue with that bearish trend and there'll be no trade for us. So it's very, very important we see how price reacts with that area. And if you see sufficient price action in terms of wicks, engulfing candles, I'll be interested for some longs. Most likely TP will probably be either this level or that level for my particular trade if I do get involved. But end goal will obviously be back to the highs. I'm more expecting the trend to continue back to the highs until it doesn't. So pound NZD next week, still bullish. Keep an eye on 2.09. First target 2.112. Second 2.138. And final target back to the highs at 2.158 next week. Okay, so over to CAD Yen. So CAD Yen finally got the breakout this week. I've been looking for price to break out this consolidation, and we finally did this week, breaking to the upside and pushing back into 109,500, about into this resistance more or less. So with CAD JPY hitting that resistance, most likely we might see some retracement now. As you can see, a hefty move to the downside. We've only just come back into it. Probably could see some downside. There is still room to the upside if you want to come to the daily and the weekly swing highs. Of course, if I do drop to the weekly time frame, you can see this is our big push to the upside. This is our pullback, so potentially price may want to push back into the highs there. Maybe even see some higher highs as well and continue the trend. So there is still room to the upside. The trend is still bullish on multiple time frames, especially the higher time frames, which is the most significant time frame. So I still do see more upside for pound NZD for CAD Yen. But do I want a long CAD Yen at the moment? Coming into that high, absolutely not. I want price to be traced for me, give you the next higher low, and then possibly if we can see the sufficient price action, then I can look for some buys and probably keep it simple and push it back to where it came from. So if you do see some nice retracement, looking for some buys back into that same high, that would make a lot of sense there. Of course, we do have that weekly target slightly above at 110, so that could be a possible place to, if you want to trail your stop loss or look for any extended targets, leave small positions to trickle, that could be a possibility. But at the same time, this is a big level of resistance, hefty moves to the downside. Don't really want to be trying pushing trades through that. But of course, we'll see in terms of risk to reward if I do try and push it through or not. But I definitely will be taking some profit back at the high at 109,390. So CAD Yen going forward, still seeing consistent higher highs and higher lows. I'm really liking the price action, approaching a very key level of resistance. So we do want to see some retracement. We do have a big level above us where potentially price could be working towards. But of course, we do want to see some retracement away from that level, and then we can look for some buys. We do have a nice area of confluence here at 108,510. So if you can see a lovely retest of that structure there, that'll be fantastic. Targets back to where it came from, back at 109,390 and possibly 110 eventually. But that'll be the plan going into next week for CAD Yen. Okay, so over to pound USD. So pound USD slowly making its way to the downside. We are breaking through 1.245 now, which is the daily resistance I was talking about over here. The market's breaking through. So next key target I'm looking at is a push into the swing low down here, which is 1.23100. So still expecting more downside for pound USD. We've well and truly broken through that neckline of this big head and shoulder pattern. We've done it a while ago, of course, but the market's still trending to the downside very confidently. So yeah, more downside for next week. Again, all I do as a trader is spot trends, spot clear market direction, and look to anticipate the market will continue in that direction until we see a break of structure. And as of yet, we haven't seen that. The market's still giving us lower lows and lower highs here, and a lovely move to the downside. So I'm looking at two areas where the market could potentially retrace into and then sell off again for that next bearish leg. This is one area I'm looking at, 1.255, we'll call it 1.255. Potentially, if the market wants to have a slightly deeper retracement, again, that'll be fantastic into this area, see how the market reacts. Shorts look great over there. And also just a simple breaking retest of this low. We had a lot of consolidation this week. Pound USD, Euro USD, and then of course we had that big drop to the downside, which is kind of broken through that. So price may want to come up and retest that level again and potentially sell off. If we're quite bearish, we're seeing a lot of bearish momentum, we might not see the bigger retracement into this area. So a slightly more shallow one will probably suffice for the market, and then we'll probably expect to see the next bearish leg from that. And of course we've got our daily targets just underneath us at 1.23100. So yeah, more downside for pound USD. Two really good areas to look at for some shorts. Slightly more shallow one there. If we have a bigger retracement, we're prepared as well, looking at 1.255. As long as we don't break through this area, I'm still expecting more downside for pound. So hopefully get some nice pullbacks and we don't just melt to the downside or gap down. Looking at 1.245 for some shorts on the breaking retest of that low. And if we have a slightly deeper retracement, looking at this area of confluence around 1.255, 254. And of course, some push, some moves back down to the low at 1.231 next week. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD took a hit this week, big move to the downside, which we was expecting. We were looking for price to come back into this support level, and actually price completely broke through there as well. So yeah, pound CAD was very, very bearish this week and broke through that level like it was no tomorrow. And it looks like we could be seeing the start of a reversal here. We have been bullish for quite a while with pound CAD, but since past couple of months, we have been failing at the highs here. And now we're starting to break some structure as well. So what I can see going forward in longer term is possibly another lower high and a bigger drop to the downside as well, because we are coming to a big area on the weekly, monthly chart, this big consolidation area which we could be reacting towards and possibly seeing a bigger move to the downside. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next few months do give us some downside like that, and what we're seeing on the daily in the 4H could be the start of that bearish trend. So going into the 4H, not looking at anything too complicated. Of course, we're breaking through some key lows. What I'm looking at next is some retracement. We do have a brief area of consolidation here on pound CAD at 1.69 where we dropped to the downside, where we saw a lot of momentum. Haven't come up for the retest yet, so if we can get a bigger pullback into that area, that would be a fantastic place to look for some shorts. Oh, I keep misdragging that. Fantastic area to look for some shorts and take advantage of some selling opportunities, of course waiting for the necessary price action in terms of confirmation to actually trigger us into the trade. But as you can see, you know, this is the support, essentially getting a retest of this price swing low here on the left, and this is a very nice area to do that. So just waiting for a bigger pullback for pound CAD, because we've had a very aggressive move to the downside, so don't want to be shorting down here. Market's kind of already made its move. I want to see some pullbacks, some healthy pullbacks, then catch the next wave. And of course, in terms of targets, we can just be looking at these price swing lows here on the left. They make for some really nice healthy targets going forward. So what I want to see for pound CAD is some retracement into 1.687, which is this area here. Look for some entries in that area and targets. If we retrace from that, this prior low could be a target, this low here could be a target, this low here could be a target as well. Like I said, if that higher time frame move is going to happen on the weekly and the monthly chart, I would imagine we'll probably tick all of these areas off eventually. So it just determines how aggressive you want to be with your targets. Now you look to manage your trades. Longer term, you could be looking at 1.66200 there, but again, for next week you may just want to target the low there, or 1.67. that'll be up to you. But in terms of entries, in terms of a solid location to look to short, I'm looking at 1.687 going forward. So yeah, more downside for next week for pound CAD. Okay, so moving on to pound yen. So pound yen, I am still bullish on the higher time frames, looking at the daily, the weekly, the monthly, still seeing comfortable uptrend as we can see here. Weekly as well. Weekly is showing some signs of wicks to the upside, so it does look like we're going through some exhaustion here. Maybe it's time for some retracement, but again, in terms of the trend, there's nothing broken, no key structure broken. We're still seeing confident bullish candles to the upside, monthly likewise as well. So everything is still pretty bullish on the higher time frames for pound yen. However, looking at the full H, we're placing a lot of lower highs here. As we can see, the market's failing to create higher highs still. Looks like we're starting to break through this significant level of support. And of course, with the weekly throwing those wicks to the upside as well, it does look like we're likely to see some retracement now for pound yen, or continue retracement, because we kind of have seen that for the past couple of weeks or so. But it looks like that has some more room to the downside, and then maybe soon enough we do kick back in bullish, because that has been the theme for the yen pairs for about 1 or 2 years now, where we have seen a lot of bullish momentum, the brief retracements, or sometimes quite heavy retracements, but then soon enough the market kicks back in bullish and we keep flying. So with pound yen, I'm definitely not looking at a reversal until we start breaking through some significant structure, but we can still look for some shorter term sell opportunities. And I will be interested in a break and retest of 183.500. If we can push the downside a little bit further, come back for a retest. I do like what I'm seeing on a retest of this structure around 183.500. If I can get the necessary price action, I'll be looking for some sell opportunities. And we've got a lovely low here to target as well, around 181, or even this low here as well, where we had that brief pullback and a big move to the upside. 181.500 looks like a solid place for a take profit as well, or at least to start managing your position. But yeah, going forward with pound yen, I am looking at some downside. Again, I'm still bullish overall on the pair, but what I'm looking at some shorter term sells. Maybe we can look at some longer term buys sooner enough, but with the full H, I'm seeing lower lows, I'm seeing lower highs now, so I cannot be looking at buys in these conditions until I start seeing the market start breaking structure back to the upside again. And then of course I'll look to get back in the buys, but right now we're pushing down. So staying aware of the higher time frame trend, knowing that possibly these sales won't continue too far, so a little bit more aggressive with our management on them. But nonetheless, still a great opportunity to trade, still fits the plan, still fits the picture of what we're looking for. So we'll keep an eye on 183.500 if we can break and retest it, and then looking at pushing to 181.500, and if we can break through that, 180.800 as well next week. Okay, so on to gold. So gold, we had a big push down followed by a big move back up. So we were looking at some sales coming into the week. We were talking about this head and shoulder pattern with the left. Oh, that is very dodgy. Let me draw that again. The left shoulder over here, the head, and then we were looking at the right shoulder. Another move to the downside there upon some news, and then we failed to really get going after that. I was looking for a push into 1890, but since then the market's had a very violent move back up again, almost like a V-shape move here, which is not the best in terms of looking to sell. I don't really want to look to sell V-shape patterns in the market, because most of them end up doing something like this and actually giving us that inverse head and shoulder pattern, which could actually give us a move higher. So with gold going forward, buys actually look the best going into next week. Again, I'm not really convinced with the buys for gold, because if I'm looking at the higher time frames and the swing highs, they are pretty bearish. We've got the lower highs here, lower highs here. Eventually gold, I do see a bigger move to the upside, back to the highs, probably breaking through this major level of resistance here at 2050. But I need a little bit more evidence, a little bit more signs that the market is actually giving me that structure, aka breaking through the highs here. Then yeah, more than happy look to follow that trend to the upside. But as of right now, all I'm seeing is these lower highs, so my bearish bias is still intact. But in terms of the price action, the full H, it's definitely time for me and anyone who has a bearish bias to probably put a pause on that for now. Yes, we may see a reaction coming into this area here, but it most likely will be short-lived, and we probably will see a push back to the upside, potentially breaking through as well. So buys actually look the best bet with gold going into next week. Keep an eye on this area here. That's the prime place for that left shoulder to form, coming back into 1912, and probably some nice buys back into the high. Whether we go for that big reversal, that is up to gold. Again, I'm not a fortune teller. All I can look at is price action structure, make my best judgment in terms of the trend analysis, and go from there. Not really too much of a big fan of gold next week. Probably some nice buys at 1912. Of course, wait for the price action at that particular area. Possibly could see a push back to the highs there as well. It's quite aggressive, but we will have to see what gold has in store. And of course, if you do see that move and the market starts giving us a bullish trend, I'll be more than happy to look for a pullback and get involved, because if we are going to push back to the highs, we've got a long way to go. I don't need to jump in right at the bottom here. There's probably going to be a pullback over here, which I can get into and still find a nice 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4. So again, not trying to be too aggressive or force anything that isn't really there for me. But for gold buys, look good. Keep an eye on 1912. That 1928 is a nice target. If you're looking to stretch the trade a little bit further, then you do have the highs there, but I would suggest looking to manage the trade as you go along. So yeah, gold next week, still have that bearish bias, but some pause right now. Keep an eye on the buys there at 1912, 1917, first target 1928, and then possibly 1945 after that. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, big move to the downside to start the week off. Things were looking pretty bearish, but we recovered that pretty quickly. And this kind of the V-shaped price action, which I was talking about just on gold, which we just touched upon. Normally when we do see this V-shaped price action, normally means the market wants to move in the opposite direction. That's it, had that original move in the direction of. So in this case, to the downside, followed by an equally aggressive move back up again. Normally we do tend to move to the upside, and that's what's happened with Bitcoin. But again, that doesn't change anything in terms of my bias. I'm still looking at the market breaking through this low here and taking out this low, which we came pretty close to on Monday, but we are moving to the upside. But again, in terms of the lower highs, in terms of the momentum, nothing has really changed significantly with Bitcoin. So I am still looking at the next lower high and price coming into this area to sell off again and take out the lows there. Of course, make sure you do wait for confirmations before looking to short. It's a nice area where we briefly consolidated and had that big shift of momentum to the downside. Haven't revisited that area since, so it's definitely a nice area, but of course there is a possibility we could just break straight through. So looking at price action in that area, waiting for confirmation is very important. And then if things look good, possible shorts, and if everything plays out, could be seeing a push back down to 24,686, taking out the lows there, which is definitely the plan for Bitcoin going forward. So keep an eye on some shorts around that 27k mark. Shorts back down to the low looks pretty healthy as a nice target. There is some more room to the downside, but again, I don't want to be too overly confident with the sells. That's still a solid level of support, and I wouldn't suggest looking to push the trade any further than that. Really, probably get more than enough profit on that move. So yeah, keep an eye for some shorts for Bitcoin. 27k looks like a great place to short, and yeah, looking for a push back into 24,600 next week. Okay, so on to our final pair, which is our bonus pair, which is Euro Yen for this week. So we've got a similar situation as with Pound Yen, which we looked at briefly. We've got a key level of support here, which I'm looking for price to break through. I'm looking for some break and retest of that area, another lower high, and I'm looking at some sells. Main reason being, yes, the high time frames are still pretty bullish, but we're starting to fade at the highs now. We're showing some signs of exhaustion. As you can see, we've got equal highs here. The market is no longer ripping to the upside, creating higher highs, and now we're starting to create some consolidation. Of course, potentially could break to the upside, which is why we're waiting for price to break down first, give us some nice lower lows and some lower highs to work with, and then we can look for a retest. This is a very strong level of support. Coming back into that would be a fantastic place to look to short from, look for some entries, stop loss above, and of course looking for some selling opportunities. In terms of targets, we've got a lovely level of support down here, which of course gave us a last big swing to the upside as well. So in terms of Euro Yen, it's actually a little bit cleaner than Pound Yen, so I would rather look to short Euro Yen than Pound Yen, but of course we'll see what opportunity actually manifest itself in the market, because euro yen might not give us an opportunity, pound yen might do. We might get the breakout, but we might not get the retest with one or the other. So of course we'll keep a close eye on both of them into next week. But again, with euro yen, I'm not really focusing on any buys. I know the higher time frame is bullish. My higher time frame bias is still bullish, but I'm not buying a market that has been moving sideways, equal highs, now looking at placing some lower highs as well. So this is definitely a market that is showing a lot of signs of exhaustion, maybe looking at a bigger retracement, not reversal quite yet, but a bigger retracement is on the cards. If we just start breaking to the upside, of course, and clear out the highs and these highs as well, then of course I will look for retracements and look to buy the market again. But of course we're a long way away from that, so until that happens, I'm actually waiting for the breakout to the downside. Look for retest at 157 for some shorts, and we've got a lovely support level there at 155.673 as our target. So that'll be the plan for next week for euro yen. And that, guys, brings us to the end of the video. If you have enjoyed it, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Let me know any pairs you have on your watch list next week. I'm eager to find out. Let's see how next week goes. Of course, I'll create my watch list for the next week as well on Sunday. So if you haven't joined the Telegram, make sure you go check it out. I will post top 5 setups for next week. I do that every week, so make sure you're in there. But yeah, guys, if you have enjoyed the video, please drop a like, subscribe. If you don't want to miss out any more content, streams or videos, make sure you do hit the bell so you don't miss out on anything of that sort. But guys, thanks so much for watching the video. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you all next week.